The Minnesota Lynx might have won the Commissioner's Cup, but they lost to the Wings today, 94-88. A whole bunch of great games coming up tonight. It's Thursday, and you're listening to Locked On Women's Basketball.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Gigi Speer. Tonight, the Aces are playing the Sky. The Sun are at the Mystics. The Fever are at the Storm. And then we have so much great basketball. Here joining me today is an award-winning broadcaster himself, host of New York Got Game. He is the weekend sports anchor for New York Post Sports and the sports update anchor for The Fan. Dexter Henry, thank you so much for coming on Locked On Women's Basketball.
Thanks for having me, Gigi. I'm a big fan of yours. Love what you're doing with this podcast. So thanks for having me. Thank you for the beautiful intro too. Appreciate that.
I'm happy to. And we're going to be talking about so many things with Dexter. And we also want to shout out one of our sponsors today. So today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Okay. All right. So Dexter, you're coming on. I just was on your podcast. Well, not your podcast. I was on your show.
Yeah.
And we talked a lot about the New York Liberty, but the New York Liberty lost to the Lynx. You were there. What'd you see from them?
So that game, I think was disappointing for the Liberty fan, right? We were both in the building there at UBS, and shout out to the fans that came out there, Gigi. Look, the Liberty, they were flowing in the first half, and then they were not. And one of the key things was the turnovers, 21 turnovers that led to 27 Minnesota Lynx points. So that was a disappointing thing. And the other thing for me was how they just couldn't get Jonquel Jones involved in the offense. Only 3 shot attempts for Jonquel Jones. All 3 of her points came in the fourth quarter, very late in the fourth quarter. I believe it was in the final 3 minutes. So you got to credit the Lynx in that because they're really good defensively. Like, we know that. They're top of the league defensively, and then they're so good at the three-point shooting and their ability to move the ball. But I think if you're a Liberty fan, now they've lost to the Lynx twice this season, one that actually counts in terms of the standings. They got some things to work on with them. But you got the sense, and I know you heard this after the game, Gigi, that they feel like they know what they have to do. They get to see them a week later after playing them in the Commissioner's Cup next week. So that's going to be a really big matchup at the Barclays Center. We'll see what they learn from these two. I think the Liberty will be hungry. Am I worried about the Liberty? No. It was disappointing. They played one of their sloppiest games of the season. They're also, got to remember, they're integrating players back in. But Nigel Hamilton is now came back in the fold, returning from injury. We saw Courtney Vandersloot following the death of her mom. Rest in peace to her. And so, yeah, I think they're trying to work that in and then figure out what lineups go. I think the interesting thing is, I believe it was you and I were talking about this off our recording, what they would do when Sloot came back, and will they stay with Sabrina running things at point in the starting lineup? I believe they should. I think they should. I think they had a good thing going. I think they need to keep KT in the starting lineup, Kayla Thornton, and I think they don't need to mess it up. I think that's their best lineup. I think it should be their closing lineup. So I'm really intrigued to see what Sandy Brondello does with this team going forward. But yeah, the Commissioner's Cup, disappointing if you're a Liberty fan, but also I think it should open up a lot of eyes for W fans or people who are new to the W, that the Lynx are really good. This is a team that has 7 new players this season, but they can defend, led by Nafisa Collier. They've got a lot of versatility. Kayla McBride has been killing it from downtown. Lynx are good, man. They're really good.
And you brought up one player I can't give enough credit to, Kayla Thornton. When you watch her play, you see she's ready in the corner. She wants to be in the starting lineup. She wants to be playing as much as possible. I'm really putting those words into her mouth, but I feel like anybody watching the game could see that. She has that dog mentality in her. Is there like a player you feel like you could compare her to? Someone who's just so ready to go, who can catch and shoot, but who can also defend and really do whatever the team needs, from all your experience covering the sport?
In the W, no, not that. Because the thing is, there's other players who can catch and shoot maybe well that I could think about, but defend as well as her. She's an elite level 3-and-D player, and the Liberty of 2 of those people in her and Benai Jelani, and she's even a better sniper than Benai Jelani. Like, Kayla is shooting great this season. This is as good as she's ever shot the ball, and she's shooting it so confident. She had 5 threes in that Commissioner's Cup game, Gigi. So no, and I think that's what makes her such a special weapon to that point, that I can't really think of somebody else that can catch and shoot and defend as well as many positions as she can. I think that's the thing for me, Gigi, right? It's not just to catch and shoot. It's also the ability of what she can do on the other end. We're seeing this in women's basketball. We've seen this in the men's game. You got to have versatile defenders that can spread the floor, space the floor. The Liberty, as I said, they have 2 of them, and I think that's what makes them dangerous. And I think that's their best lineup to win it all. Because when we're talking about the Liberty, we're talking about what can they do in the playoffs if they have to face the Aces, right? The Sun, maybe not so much because they don't shoot the ball well from downtown. But if they're facing the Aces, if they're facing the Lynx, who you've got a team that's fantastic at shooting the 3, they've got the players to do it. They also got the players that can hit the shot on the other side that are like, so yeah, KT is special. And I just really like her fit in that starting lineup. I really think if you've got Sabrina and KT and Benijah with Jonquil and Stewie, I think they really can cook with that. And I just like their ability to be more versatile defensively, especially when you play a team like the Aces that can put 3 amazing guards on the floor and try to break you down. So I love that. That's why I'm really intrigued to see what Sandy Brondello is going to do. Is she going to not mess up the chemistry? And would Courtney Vandersloot be okay with coming off the bench and being the 6th woman here on this team?
It's something to think about. And I have to pick your brain on this too, because you watched them intently last year. Did Sabrina get better?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And when you and I talked about this a little bit on the show too, right? Like, she's so much more efficient. And shout out to Mark Schindler, because he did a really good video breakdown a couple weeks ago. And he's so dope with that about how efficient she's been, right? And one of the things Mark was highlighting in that, and the numbers and the advanced numbers show this too, it's what she's able to do in the mid-range. Because so much of the way we looked at Sabrina and the way she played, right, was that the 3-point shot. You knew she had the range. You knew she could bomb it from 3. But what does she do when she gets in the middle of the floor? What happens when she gets trapped? Now she's finishing better at the basket, because you have to account for, okay, if she gets a step on me, she might have the floater. And the float game has been beautiful this year. Or she can take it all the way to the rack, or she can step back and pull up on you for the 3. So there's so much you have to account for with the game. She's now a true 3-level scorer. She's truly that now. And I think that I was saying this to our friend Miles Ehrlich the other day. The hardest thing I think people don't talk about in the sport of basketball, or really any sport when you think about it, is making the jump from star to superstar. That is the hardest thing to do in sports, right? And she's now in that elite territory in the league because of what she can do as a 3-level scorer. She's better. Also, I'm shouting out a lot of our friends. Christina Williams, she's been making this point. Christina's been saying, hey, maybe we should start talking about her in the most improved player of the year conversation. And I know generally it's people say, oh, well, you know, she's a former number 1 overall pick. And I generally, I don't have a vote for this, but I generally like to not vote for people who are drafted that high. So if I had to vote,
an underdog. We love an underdog.
Which is why if I had to vote right now, I'd be voting for Dejanay Carrington. I think she's been the player that's shown the most improvement in the league, and in my opinion. But Sabrina's improvement should not go without talking about. It is absolutely impressive what she's done to transform her game. I think she's really knocking on the door of superstar status right now because of the way she's so tough to defend. The other thing that has been amazing, I think you and I talked about this so well too, was just like how good she looks in these pick and rolls with Jonquil Jones. She's so impressive. The passing's got better. I know she had a bad 7 turnover game against the Lynx on Tuesday, but the passing's got better, the decision-making's better, and I think this team is more dynamic when she's at the point guard. But the reason is because she's such a threat, not just from 3-point land, but mid-range, and then also finishing at the basket.
This is Dexter Henry, guys. This is Locked On Women's Basketball, and we're going to be talking about the media coverage surrounding by the whole WNBA right after this. So as I mentioned already, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. I know this is a basketball podcast, but it's summertime, and that means in New York City, we go to baseball games, we go to Yankees games, we go to Mets games. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Yankees are at the Blue Jays tonight. I wish I could go. I think that it would be so fun to be there. And on Game Time, I see amazing deals, perfect seats down the left field line, which is where I like to sit in my budget. So make sure that you go check out Game Time. I even like the customize your spot feature where I could check out last minute deals, flash deals, zone deals. It's easy to find and buy MLB tickets for every kind of event in your area. You get a view from your seat in the venue in the Game Time app, and it's the lowest price guarantee. Event cancellation is even there, and there's job loss protection as well. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. With flash deals, you could save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute deals, lowest price guaranteed. Okay. All right, Dexter, we're back. I only have you for a little bit more, and I need to pick your brain, get your expertise on this. You've been doing your job for quite some time. You started a new show, New York Got Game, and with the show, you're pushing for coverage of the New York Liberty. And maybe I want to know, just to start, does it feel like you're pushing for the coverage, or in the organization, is it like, oh, well, we have to cover the Liberty. They got so many eyes on them last season, and this season they're expected to be just as great, if not better. Yeah, from your perspective, is it something where it's like, oh, it's a little quota I got to meet, or it's an initiative of my own that I want to push for? Or is this something that you feel like the world's changed now, the landscape's changed, and people are hungry for this?
So it's funny because you're the second person that asked me this that was on a podcast. Teresa from Liberty Latte had asked me this question too. And she asked me when I started New York Got Game, did I initially say, okay, we're going to cover the Liberty? The answer is yes, absolutely yes. And nobody told me to do that. Nobody asked me to do that. I initially, to be fully transparent, thought about doing a Knicks show. And then I was like, but that's limiting. When the Knicks season's over, then I don't do it. I love to talk about basketball all year round. So I said, no, we got to also talk about the Nets. We're also going to talk about the Liberty. I am a hoops junkie. Anybody who knows me knows I love basketball. I love watching it. I've been watching Liberty for years. Even before I did the show at the Post in SNY, I was the one person doing the Liberty coverage. I was the person getting people to come on. You know, you came on and talked Liberty with me once in the studio. And so we were always doing this, and Christina and Miles and other people I know who cover the sport so well. Tarika Foster Brasby, all those people. You know, what I saw is before the show, I think now it's the trendy thing to do. And I think that's the thing you're kind of hitting on in media. So I do think it's a good question to ask people, like, hey, were you really about this? And for me, it was, because I love basketball. I love women's basketball. So it only made sense to talk about it. And I also thought there were a lot of women in the space that covered the sport that weren't getting their voices seen and amplified. And I'm proud to help to do that and be part of it, to talk with people who know the sport so well, even people who've covered it longer and know better and deeper than me. People were just so amazing in the game, and I get to talk to them about it. So for me, it was like, why not do that? You've been on my show. You know, we've had Candace Pedraza, Christina, Tarika. We've had a lot of Miles, a lot of great people around this that I've talked to and have been willing to come on. There'll be more too that are amazing in the space. So for me, nobody was pushing it. Now you see it's trendy, and now I hear things even with people I work with. It's like, yeah, let's now cover women's sports. And I'm like, I've been doing this. You know what I mean? And so, but here's the thing. If people are jumping on now and they want to cover women's sports, or they want to be a part of covering women's basketball, and I'm sure we're going to get to this, I think that's cool. My only thing with that is you need to be respectful of the voices that were here even before you, and be conscious of who even knows more than you. So especially a lot of women, and particularly even a lot of Black women in the space who have been at the forefront of this media coverage, forefront of the league, and have done that. And I have tons of respect for those people. So, you know, even I'm late, if you want to say, in the game of my coverage. I've always been a fan and watching, but I will say that, yeah, I'm proud that on New York Got Game, which is my show, and, you know, I have my name on it and produce it. And is that I made it a point that, yeah, we're going to cover the Liberty. And there was no pushback on that. Nobody told me I couldn't cover it. I couldn't do it. And the interest is growing. I felt good when it's funny, I mentioned Teresa from Liberty Latte. Before she even started doing Liberty Latte, she had tweeted at me and asked me, hey, I saw when you did some Liberty stuff when you started the show, are you going to be doing some off season, some more stuff, Liberty content? Because I do have to realize, in terms of a basketball show in New York, I'm one of the, if not the only digital basketball show that's all encompassing for all New York professional basketball, right? That does it. But there's other Liberty shows coming out. There's obviously this podcast. I'm so thrilled to see more podcasts, more content on women's basketball. That makes me excited. And, I hope that continues to grow. But I do think there's people, I will say this. I think the people that have been authentic in the space, I'll talk particularly in New York about covering women's basketball. I'll put myself there. And I'll also salute Tina Cervasio and Jennifer Williams from Fox, who've done a fantastic job in that space too. And I think it matters because they're one of the few sports departments in local TV in the country where it's two women doing it. And they do such a great job with that. And yeah, I think it's been authentic and showing the way we've covered the sport and how we've done it. So salute to them too, because I think they do a great job as well. So yeah.
You could definitely dub yourself like a shout out machine. One thing about you is you spread the love. Like, you always recognize the great people in the space. And I feel like it's infectious too, because I always think about the different people who I look at their work and I'm so influenced by. And one name too, we haven't mentioned yet, but Monica McNutt posted the other day.
Yeah.
You and I were both like big fans of her. I'm sure you're probably closer with her than I am. I've only met her a couple times, but she posted something. She's like, I have to do the work now and it was a funny thing, but it's deep, where she has to go do the work of really talking the X's and O's of the game, which is what people are hungry for. And which is what I love to listen to. And there's so many people putting work out in that way. Do you feel like, and in a way, I feel like I'm cheating the system in a way, because I'm asking you about media coverage and we just spent the first segment talking X's and O's, and I would love to talk more, but having your expertise on too, are you noticing when you're watching different shows and even on your own show too, are people diving into the X's and O's of women's basketball just as much as they would dive into, say, Knicks coverage or Nets coverage? Even in the press conferences is another continuation where I haven't yet been to a Knicks press conference. I've been to Nets press conferences, and there's not many times that I hear a question of what's the significance of this game, for the sport in general. And yeah, so I guess just to wrap it up and to ask you an actual question is that something that you feel like we're getting past asking, what does this mean for women's sports? And we're getting more into, man, these girls are hoopers. Let's talk about yada yada. Let's talk about the details of the game. Are we going more to that territory, or am I just too optimistic?
No, you're not being optimistic. I will even say this: like, there was times last year where I remember, is particularly after the women's national championship game, and I remember I had Christina Williams on with me, and I asked her about that, and I was like, "Yo, what does this mean for the growth of the game?" Right? I will speak for me personally, and then I'll go to the broader thing. For me personally, I'm done asking that.
Yeah,
we don't like we don't need to talk about that anymore. The game has grown. You can see where it's at. I think I had Christina on this year after the national championship game, and we did not talk about the growth of the game or what it meant. I kind of went to, hey, how excited are we for the W season coming up? Like, we kind of went to that. And I think that there needs to be, I think what you're hitting on, Gigi, is there's a lack. I think the people in the know. There are people who talk about the X's and O's. Monica McNutt is talking about it. Nikias Duncan does a fantastic job talking about it. As you can see, I'm shouting out all these people that are bringing great stuff to the game. Tarika Foster-Brasby does this. There's so many people that do this if you want it. Eric Ayala does a great job at this.
For real.
And I've talked with some of these people that I'm just mentioning about what I'm about to say. The national coverage has been a little bit disappointing, because now you have people coming into the space that don't really understand women's basketball. So honestly, let me take that back. Not that they don't understand women's basketball. They're not treating it with the same respect that they treat men's basketball. Mm-hmm. There's been a shock factor for some people about, oh my God, I can't believe the WNBA is so physical. Why did you think it would not be? Like, I think that's a fair question to ask. Mm-hmm. that they're so. I think it's the way people expect women's sports to be presented, and the WNBA has been a league about everybody's going to be who they're going to be and accepted for that. And so I think some people have had issues reconciling with that because they're not used to seeing sports be that way. And men's sports hasn't really been that way, if we're being honest about it. I think the other thing too is then you've had men coming into the space. And I'm not saying that all of it has been bad intentions, but they're being awkward talking about women's sports because for some reason they act like they can't talk about women the way they talk about male athletes. They can't talk about the female athletes the way they talk about male athletes. I don't understand that personally, but that's part of what I see is going on. So you're seeing a lot taken away from X's and O's. We're talking too much about Caitlin versus Angel instead of the Fever and Sky actually being a dope rivalry in itself because these games have been good. Like we're not talking enough about that. Oh, are the Lynx ready to challenge the Liberty and the Aces for the top spot in the WNBA? Is Connecticut ever going to break through? What's up with the Storm and the team they formed together? Are they starting to gel? Do the Mercury have something to say? There's a lot of good things you could talk about in this. I think people have been lazy, to be quite honest. I'm waiting to see, and I really mean this. I mean this in terms of the mainstream media. I want to see the mainstream media start talking more about these X's and O's. But I think part of it is respecting it and bringing on the people that are good at doing that. And they are there, and don't reduce them to just talking about rivalries or issues or, people talking about how everybody's hating on Caitlin Clark in the league, which isn't true. And people who don't even follow the league. Like that's another thing I would say, if anybody's listening to this podcast, please support the people who follow the league and do the work. Like, please support those people. We don't have to listen to the other talking heads that clearly don't watch the games. Some of the people I've mentioned, the great writers, the great people, analysts here that I've mentioned in this space, they watch the games, guys. They really watch the games. They are basketball junkies like myself, even at some of the higher level. They watch these games. Follow them. Listen to them. Amplify their voices. There's tons of great writers and people doing the work out there. Amplify those voices and support it. I think there could be more. I think it's there. It's just on the mainstream. There's still not enough talking about the X's and O's. But with that being said, Gigi, I am optimistic it's going there. I eventually think it will get there because I think of podcasts like this and shows like mine and other people doing the work. Eventually it's going to get there. I think also for us in the media, we sometimes have to ignore some of the noise. And when people say stupid stuff, we kind of sometimes we don't got to pay attention to everybody all the time. We don't have to feed the trolls all the time. You know what I mean? We don't have to do that. So yeah,
we don't. And my last question for you too, do the analytics reflect that too, where the bing bong videos of the world, the Knicks videos get eaten up, and maybe it's I have my New York influence, but it seems like if there's a viral Knicks video, that's viral nationwide. For you, are you noticing where if it's a viral women's basketball video, is it being spread throughout New York? And do the analytics of the shows that you guys are putting out, do they reflect that there is an audience there too?
It reflects that there's an audience. Now, is the audience the same as the Knicks audience? No. Like, I'll just be transparent about that. I mean, you can look this up. You can look it up on YouTube. So it's not like I'm hiding anything. If you go look at the episode when you came on with me a couple weeks ago, and then the next week it was Candace Pedraza, those episodes did not do as well in terms of viewership as the Knicks previewing the draft did, right? Like, they did good. And the one thing I've seen personally is that the Liberty content has only been going up. It's just going up and up and up more and more. I think the things people need to see is consistency with it, just like anything else. And as you talk about it more, it's going to be good. Now, that's just on my show where you're specifically coming for basketball. But the other New York post content I do, if we normalize and I do a segment on the Liberty or we preview a game or stuff like that, it's important because it's becoming regular in the rotation. Something else I've noticed, and I haven't seen I don't know everybody who does this at WFAN, but when I do updates and I do update anchoring, I mention the WNBA. I always talk about the Liberty if their game is coming up. I don't know if any of the other anchors do it.
With my updates, it was there. NFL, NBA, women's basketball. If there was a women's basketball game last night, I'm talking about that. The draft NBA draft is important as well, but I was actually going to ask you about your updates because I had to do
Yeah.
my updates in college, and I'm like, wait, why is there not a plugged in? The WNBA season's happening right now. NFL, we got weeks. Why are we talking about? Why are we talking about Jets training camp? It hasn't happened yet. Anyway, I want to let you finish your point, but that's
no, I've noticed. I noticed when I started there, like nobody else was doing it, but that is not a reason that's ever stopped me from doing something in the space that I do. So yeah, I've noticed that, but I do think it's also becoming more normalized. You're seeing, and I hope for the right reasons, you're seeing more women's basketball scores, news on ESPN's front page, on CBS Sports, all these different outlets, even the New York Post. You know, we've been starting to send a reporter for Liberty games consistently. We don't have an official Liberty beat writer, but we're trending there. So you see that starting to happen. I mean, the fact that it wasn't just me, we had a reporter at the Commissioner's Cup game is big. You know, I don't think the Daily News, New York Post, New York Times, well, they have The Athletic, and, you know, Ben Pickman does a lot of coverage in WNBA, Sabrina Merchant. But there's, you know, I think you'll start to see teams having beat reporters. I still think we're probably a couple years away from that. I'm a little surprised there hasn't been more in New York. But you'll see, you know, you got Callie with the Aces. She's a reporter out there covering them as a beat reporter. So there's few, but there's a couple in the country, but it's coming. I think it's coming. I think it's grown for women's basketball. I think women's basketball fans and the league should be excited. And I'm glad we've actually had this conversation about media coverage, and we haven't even like dove into the negatives and some of the ridiculousness that's been around through the media coverage this year. Like, yeah, I think you're bringing up a great point, Gigi, and asking good questions in that. I'd like to see more X's and O's talked about. I'd like to see more strategy. I'd like to see more things we're talking about the draft, how this team is going to adjust. I want to see more of that. And hopefully we also get more dedicated women's basketball shows. I think that's another thing too that's kind of on the horizon. You know, ESPN does a good job right now with Elle Duncan and Shanae and the ladies that come on, I think, are great too. And so I think it's trending in the right direction, but I just think we have to keep amplifying the voices that are really good in this space and continue to do that. And I say, I'll challenge other networks and outlets to do this. You can find those people if you want to. You don't have to be lazy and use the same people over and over. You can find the good talent and the good people in this space. They're there. There's a lot of good people doing good work in this space. They're there. You could find them if you want to. You really can. I really believe that.
And Dexter, how can the people find you? I have your Instagram there, but where do you want people to check out your work? You're doing a lot of it too. So we want to send all of our listeners over to more Dexter Henry content.
I mean, I'm glad for that. You can follow me, D Henry TV, on all social platforms. You can check me out on the SNY YouTube channel, the New York Post YouTube channel. Also started hosting a new show that'll start on July 28th, UFX League on Fox Sports. That'll be pretty fun. Check that out if you can. It's a calisthenics competition league. It's really good. I've been having fun doing it. First episode out July 28th, Fox Sports. Check that out.
Check it out. Dexter, it's always a pleasure. We got to let you run, but thank you so much for coming on. And I'm so happy I got to see you at the Commissioner's Cup, and I'll see you at Barclays Center next week.
Yeah, you'll see me at Barclays Center next week. Gigi, it's always a pleasure seeing you, and keep up the great work. You know, I'm a big fan of yours, so just keep it up. Proud of you.
Thank you so much. That means the world. Dexter, thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for listening.